What is going on, everybody, and welcome to episode number 77 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, and coming down from that Kentucky Derby, I would say hi, but kind of a low to end off the Kentucky Derby. If you watched our show on Monday, you guys saw our reaction to the 150th Kentucky Derby. Of course, repping it today on both of the apparels, but man, what an unbelievably tough beat for us for the 150th Kentucky Derby. If you guys haven't seen our reaction, it's actually pretty funny at this point. I would highly recommend going to watch that. But we have a fun show for you guys tonight. Is again, the kind of lay down from the Derby starts with this week, but Peter Pan Stakes is starting to on Saturday, which you can see episode 350 of Picks and Ponies, which is tomorrow, Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Please check that out. Obviously, I'll continue to go through the spiel, but we have two big stakes races at Gulfstream Park that we're going to cover for you guys along with the late Pick5. And this is the Win and You're In Royal Palm Juvenile Stakes and Royal Palm Juvenile Filly Stakes that are the Win and You're Ins for ASCOT. We saw Crimson Advocate win the Juvenile last year and obviously go to ASCOT and actually win at Royal Ascot. It was a fantastic result for them. Obviously hasn't come back to the States too well yet, but I'm sure he will pick up his feet into his 3-year-old year. But man, like I said, we saw one produced last year. Who's saying we can't see another one this year? But again, everyone, welcome in. Thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Just a little preview for you guys of tonight. As you see scrolling around the bottom of the screen, bettinandboozin@gmail.com is the email. Please email me with any questions, comments, or concerns. Also, please go down below the video player. Please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. They're the two easiest and best ways to help out our channel, because not only, well, one, it'll show us that you guys are liking the content on the channel. It'll bring you back to the channel for every single episode on the HHH Racing Podcast, but it will also put this video and a lot of videos out into the YouTube algorithm from the HHH Racing Podcast to hopefully bring like-minded people like yourself over to the channel. And for that, we thank you. As again, going through it, guys, we also post every single episode on the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel through our audio platforms as well, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor, or wherever you get your podcasts. But those are the three we love to see. We see a bunch the most viewership on is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. So go please rate, review, and subscribe over there, guys. For those that were part of the Power Picks for the Derby, man, I mean, what an absolutely amazing week we had. Not only with price plays, spot plays, we hit at least 2 per day. Pick5s. I mean, every single thing. We had best bets. Charlie hit both his best bets both days. I hit one of mine, and I hit my best long shot of the day with dynamic pricing on Friday. I'm sure you've heard me talk about that at length. If you follow me on Twitter, we had victory cigars for that one. But guys, like I said, the Power Picks is one of the cheapest out there, one of the most affordable, and one of the most profitable over the entirety of almost 3 years that Howard, Pete, Paul, and all of us have been doing it. We have a positive ROI well beyond the $2 mark. I believe it's somewhere around the $2.25 mark. And that's for over almost 550 picks now at this point. If you guys aren't subscribed for only $4 a weekend, you guys are missing out, as it includes everything you need to be successful on any given Saturday. That comes through patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. The link is also in the description. And if you want to see previous editions of those Power Picks before you buy them, or you just want to find out more about us and the podcast, HHHRacingPodcast.com is the place to do that. But guys, we will get right into it, and we'll go through the chat real quick, and then we'll get right into the handicapping to get through this late Pick5 for you guys. But first, I'm going to bring on my two co-hosts from the Ohio State University, but now down in the sunny state of Florida, and possibly might be going to these races on Saturday, Charlie Freeman, and from the stormy state of, I believe he's still in Kentucky. You might have to correct me on that, but Noah Maher. Boys, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm stuck here.
He's stuck there for another month, obviously doing a really good internship that he has. So, good down there for a reason. But yeah, if Noah's power goes out and he just goes a black screen, we'll all know why. Yeah, we were talking before the show, and I saw at least 5 big lightning strikes outside his window. So that one,
yeah, we'll see.
Will be fun.
We're gonna hope.
for you guys. We don't want to speak it into existence either, of course. But guys, let's get right to the chat. Then we'll get right into the handicapping. Of course, Katie is here. Thanks so much, Katie, for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Racing Downwind is here from Japan. So very nice of him to join. He said here to show my support from Tokyo, Japan. And he's going to the races in Hong Kong, I believe, either next week or the week after. So Dave, Racing Downwind, thanks so much, man, for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Michael Austin is here. Mark Bogas is here. Looks like Cassie, Ward, and Weaver want to go to ASCOT, as you'll see in these races. They have a bunch of the horses that are in both of the Royal Palm races. So Cassie, Ward, and Weaver definitely could dominate. And Howard, the boss man, is here. Konnichiwa. Yes, albeit, yeah. If you don't know, the boss Howard is going to ASCOT, the Royal ASCOT this year. So hopefully he can he gets to see one of these horses run well. Terry Frank is here. Tana Hawkins is here. Let's see. Nathan Woodward, thanks so much for joining the show, Nathan. He says, great job with your Derby coverage. Greatly appreciate it, my friend. Like I said, we try our hardest to bring our best content to you. And obviously, if you follow me on X, all the guys on this screen did a fantastic job with that. So thanks, Nathan, for the kind words. Greatly appreciate it. But guys, let's get right in. Let's not waste any more time here. Let's get right into these races. Unfortunately for everybody, we do not have any morning lines as we are doing this 3 days in advance. You'll see morning lines come out tomorrow. So our picks will either be right on the morning line or way off. I mean, we don't know. And I guess that's the beauty of it. I always do my handicapping without morning lines, and that's when Jim Plars comes in and says bullshit. But I always do my handicapping without morning lines, and then I bring them up after the fact. So it doesn't have necessarily any fact on my handicapping, but it's definitely definitely an easy thing to look at as well. The late pick 5 starts in race number 6, guys. It's a maiden special late for 60,000 going 7 furlongs on the dirt for only 3-year-olds. And it draws a field of 8 with the morning line favorite. Or sorry, I keep see that habit. We don't have morning lines. I literally just said that 2 seconds ago. A field of 8 here. Again, 1 for Weaver, 1 for D'Angelo, and 2 for Saffie Joseph Jr. to round out the list. And I'll bring up the picks right now, guys. And here they are. So you'll see, actually, we're going with 3 different horses, which is actually a very interesting one. Charlie, you're second to me on the pick line, so I'll let you go first. You're going with number 7, Shadow Surge for Misael Jaramillo, George Weaver, and the man himself, Mike Rapoli, as he's frozen.
Yeah. I can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good, Chief. Go for it.
Oh, well, I look, I'm just going to own this on the spotlight. Even though I'm not the host, it's my first host mistake. Counting turns out to be very hard. I'm no longer in school. It's supposed to be the 8 on top, but we'll roll with it.
Oh, my God.
I do know about Shadow Surge because I actually had Red State on that day, and I know Noah had Fracture as his bomb in that race. So we were kind of very astute in that race. I actually kind of faded this one. Now, I will say I do expect Shadow Surge to take money, as it is a Rapoli horse that obviously took plenty of money at Keeneland. And, ran at a hot pace. And again, even though this isn't a horse I have anywhere, I know enough I can at least touch on. Certainly is well meant, and, they do have big expectations and could run well. The question will be how the horse adjusts to the distance and what the pace will be like. Now, obviously, Big City is going to be the heavy favorite. And yes, I will be going to these races. I know you'd said it was possible that I will be. I expect this horse will probably end up being even money or 4 to 5. Look, this horse ran against Invigorated, who was just obviously at Keeneland and had a rough going, but looked decent. Ran against Military Road, who's a solid horse. BU, Jefferson Street, Victory Avenue, Born Nobles, run against a ton of monsters and is finally getting a much easier field. So in theory, this should be the spot, but who knows? I mean, you can see this horse, other than on debut, has taken decent money and hasn't gotten the job done. But I don't think distance will be a concern, and I do think this is a much easier spot. But obviously, there are some other well-meant firsters in this race that we haven't seen before. Yeah. And again, certainly think the 7 could be a wild card. I'm guessing, Kyle, you kind of felt the same way. But I'm more curious with Noah. You can talk a little about the 4 here. I'm stunned he didn't have the 8 on top. I think this is one of the easier picks of the day.
Yeah, I know Big City's probably the most logical, probably out of the races that we're covering. Just my handicapping theory in general is to not bet horses that just don't like to win. I understand that these fields have been much tougher, and if he runs back to any of those numbers, he probably blows his field away. But I'm going to go with the 4, just because the 4 is a little bit of a question. We don't really know what the 4 can do, obviously. Saffie Joseph has 2 in here, and Zayas was on the a 2 last time who was a little disappointing, didn't take much money. I assume this one will probably be a little bit lower on the morning line. I'm assuming maybe 5-1, 6-1. But I like the way that this horse is working down at Palm Meadows.
Yep.
And I like the fact that last work, I think this horse has got some speed in him. So if Zayas kind of sends from the inside, maybe he's able to take the rail and take him the whole way.
Well, yeah, and I agree and we all agree. You know, Charlie and I both have this horse in second behind Big City. I mean, this horse ran a 46-2, working very well for at Palm Meadows for Safi Joseph, who we know obviously runs very well at Gulfstream Park. I can just show you guys first-time starters for Safi is 16%, but then you bring in, I believe, if you bring in Gulfstream, it gets a lot better. As I use today's track, and no, it's only actually 17%, so that shakes you a pretty good stats. 51 for 297. Big sample size there, winning at 17%, which obviously isn't that bad, but the horse is working very well. And cloud computing for first-time starters only wins at 8%. So that's definitely something to keep in mind there for Safi Joseph, although I think with these workouts, definitely well meant for the connections. And we covered the 7 already. Shadow Surge. The last race, I think, was a little too tough for him. That was out of that Fracture race, Noah. And besides Fracture and Coach Campbell, a lot of horses have come back to run well. Brody, Lose Legacy, ran on Derby Day. Just got steadied on the first turn, but otherwise ran very well with a paired Beyer top there for Lose Legacy. Brody came back. Let's Bounce. Granted, not that obviously much, but they still did improve their Beyers. So maybe a good live race coming out of. I think Shadow Surge could definitely be one at least to capture in the money. But no, Charlie, you have the last laugh here. Go Irish for Jenna Antonucci. Irish War Cry. You don't see too many of those, but out of Paul's obviously favorite horse, Curlin, working decently at Gulfstream Park. And again, in these races, these first-time starters definitely you need to give a look. And Jenna Antonucci's been winning really well at Gulfstream.
Yeah, and I saw, for someone who I wouldn't say is exactly, typically known for the first-time starters, you can see quietly is at 13% on first starters, which, again, I understand it's not at the same monsters you maybe see of someone like Wesley Ward, who sends out a lot more firsters, and some of these other guys like, George Weaver. But I still think that's a decent enough mark. The works are, obviously they're not all amazing, but I still obviously keyed in on that 59 and the 47 and 1 that kind of caught my eyes. And again, as you touched on, a lot of these races, it is a lot more of, looking at the will pays and stuff like that to let the board kind of tell you what these horses are supposed to be. But kind of going with what Noah talked about, the 4 who we all have as well, it kind of, for me, felt like every other horse who has experience didn't really move me. But when I looked at, the works tab and, other horses that have, come from similar horses from this 4 and 3, those were just the 2 that really stood out for me. As you touched on, she's also had a very solid year in general and has done decent at Gulfstream for also someone who doesn't send a crazy amount of horses at Gulfstream compared to someone like Safi, who we were just talking about. But, yeah, I think these are some interesting horses underneath. And the only other thing I'll say that I like that Noah touched about is, with these firsts that we've never seen, we never know who could freak. So if you are kind of looking for a race where even though Big City does look like the overwhelming favorite, these are the kind of races you can take a chance on because the horse still hasn't gotten it done. And while in theory, if the horse runs his race, he should, win pretty convincingly. Any of these other horses could, be well ready for a big effort. Yeah,
and definitely at least to round out your exactas and tries is obviously someone has to run second and third if you think Big City is very formidable in this race. And just, last thing on Big City here, just running, when you talk about obviously works, but you want to talk about running lines, guys. Born Noble was a horse to come back and was, 2 to 5 on the dollar that day and somehow didn't get it done, which we were all shocked about. That day, that's a horse who came back to run very well. Speakeasy is another one in Victory Avenue. Speakeasy didn't come back to run yet, but I got 100 that day. Victory Avenue, who of course for Gustavo Delgado and the same owners for Mage thought he was going to be the next one like that. Just very, very good running lines for Big City, and there's no speakeasies in this race most likely. So I think Big City really has a really nice chance to break his maiden in this one. Is definitely going to be one that I'm going to key around all day. Guys, let's move on to race number 7 here as I bring up race 7's picks right now. And this is the race before we start getting into the Royal Palm races as I switch over the Equibase right now as well. It is an allowance optional claiming 75,000, going 7 furlongs on the dirt. Only a field of 6 here, but some really nice ones. Antonio Sano, Cassie, D'Angelo, Fausto Gutierrez also has one in here. So only a field of 6, and you see our picks on the bottom of the screen. 2 of us, Charlie and I, are agreeing again, going with the number 3, Marshmallow Queen for Antonio Sano and Edgard Zayas. No, you're going to look a different way here with the number 1, Jesus Christ, Qualificada, if I could just say it correctly. I don't have this horse anywhere. Charlie has this horse in second, so obviously Charlie agrees with you a lot, but I'm interested to hear what you like most about this runner for Fausto.
First thing I'll say is for a 6-horse field, I definitely struggled looking at this race. I ultimately landed on the 1 just because when I looked at the race, nobody really kind of stood out to me. The thing with the 1 that I liked over others was that I think she's a little bit more versatile than some others. You look at the race 2 back, granted the number wasn't great. It was going 7, which they're going on Saturday. And she was able to sit right off. And then obviously she won by 8, but she probably didn't beat anybody that day. And then last time she was right on the lead, ran a decent number, improved up to a 76, which is, probably just as good enough to compete with this field. She didn't quite get it done that day. Jaramillo jumps aboard. I think he's probably not the fastest in the race, but I think he's going to have her spotted well, probably just in that pocket. And if she's good enough, then she'll be able to go by in the stretch.
Charlie, this is one that obviously you have as well. I thought this horse was honestly going to be one to go from the inside, just being drawn on the rail. And Marshmallow Queen last time, we can show this replay. I mean, it was a very impressive effort. I don't know who she beat, but I just saw the same exact trip in this race as last race from Marshmallow Queen.
Yeah, I think she's honestly the fastest in terms of long term. I don't know if she'll necessarily get the lead, but as you saw, she doesn't need to. I think that Marshmallow Queen would be happy to sit just outside, kind of like that again. And while I do agree with you, I think it is very possible that it could end up just being the 1, sends, and then this horse sits just outside. The only thing I did kind of see is I don't know if the 1 is quite as fast as the 3, and as Noah touched on, I mean, you can also see with what time form provides. The 1, as crazy it is to say, with only a 59, has arguably the best, late ability of anybody in this field. So I kind of thought the 1 could maybe save some ground on the rail and at least, stay up there long enough. Maybe one of those horses who's just kind of stuck in second the whole way and doesn't really have it to go with the 3, but at least has enough ability to be able to, finish in the money or finish second. Kind of how we talked about in the big city race, just finding someone underneath. I just think, quite honestly, the connections with Marshmallow Queen have just done an unbelievable job of consistently, as someone who is, the Gulfstream guy here, I guess this is a name I know well enough. This kind of becoming my Arlington kind of stuff, where I know Marshmallow Queen well enough to know that they always find a way to place her in these same kind of races where she always gets this same trip where, either she's just behind and then just kind of effortlessly goes by, or if it's cold enough, she'll just take them all the way. And I think they've done a great job of consistently placing her in very winnable spots. And you can kind of see in these last 3, once they were able to kind of find the right level for her, how dominant she's actually been. And then going into the 2, because I know I'm the only one who has this horse, I didn't really know where to go. I just kind of saw the huge improvement from the 56 to the 70 and thought, like Noah touched on, for a race with only 6 horses, it really wasn't as straightforward outside of, for me, for the winner as I was hoping. I was just looking for something optimistic to go off of. And I kind of felt with some of these other horses, we've kind of seen who they are and they're kind of just stuck at that ability. Whereas at least with the 2, the horse kind of looked done for. You see a 52 and the horse obviously lost to Marshmallow Queen by 23 lengths after hitting the gate and drops to 17. But then, gets a 56 and then obviously has had some problems with bumping at the start, as you've seen that in the last 3 races. But to take that step forward at the 70 and also do it, off the pace a little bit in a hot pace, which it looks like you'll get here because every horse wants to go. I just thought she could be a little interested in if she can, kind of step forward again, could at the very least, finish 3rd.
I don't disagree with you. And Noah, that's kind of the horse. That's kind of the thought that I had with our horse that we have in second. 64 late pace scenario. D'Angelo's had her in some pretty decent spots. I mean, Gunsong, we saw, who obviously came back to run very well. Mystic Lake, this race has come back to be very good as well, with Gervin's Princess and Hopes and Dreams both winning and improving buyers. Mystic Lake came back to also run an 81 again, just losing at Woodbine. So last race definitely seemed to be very good. And even though she seems a little bit slower on numbers, if there's one horse that might sit a stalking trip, and if they pick up a lot of leaders late, I thought this would be the one.
Yeah, you said it right there. That's basically everything that I was going to touch on. I will say, I think in a 6-horse field like this, I think interestingly enough, the 4 might be the wild card. I think whatever the 4 does could really kind of alter what other horses do. Because this horse is coming out of 5 furlong, 5.5 sprints on the synthetic. Cassie's thrown her in for the $75,000 claim. But if she sends, maybe she bothers the 3, maybe she's the one on the lead, and then the 1 and the 3 and the 5 as well are the ones kind of trying to sit that stalking trip, and then that can kind of, screw things up a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see.
I mean, like I said, I completely agree with you. I know I kind of stole your thunder a little bit, so I do apologize for that. But I mean, that's what I thought with the 4. I mean, I have the 4 in third. I actually didn't, like I said, I didn't have the 1 in there like you guys, even though the 1 definitely makes a lot of sense. I just thought this runner for Cassie, even though in for the claim, extremely interesting. I mean, coming from these really quick sprints at Gulfstream, where honestly, she's run pretty well. I mean, she's won back-to-back 72s with, second, a winning effort, and then only losing by 1 3/4 to a pretty tough field in that one. Now gains the extra distance, comes back on the dirt where she broke her maiden originally, and I just think this one could be prime for I mean, this one could also sit off the pace. I don't even know if she has to send necessarily. She ran fine, although I don't think she broke that day too well, so she was kind of just off the pace a little bit. Maybe wasn't as good that day, but now getting that extra distance, I think, might suit her a little more. That's why I had to throw her in third, but the 1 makes a whole lot of sense as well. I'm going 3-5-4. Charlie's going 3-1-2. Noah's going 1-5-3. Guys, moving on to race number 8, and this is one of the 2 mainstays on the card, one of the feature races. It is the Royal Palm Juvenile Fillies Stakes, going 5 furlongs on the turf. Obviously, the win and you're in for the Royal Ascot meeting. As I bring up the fields, guys, these races are so hard. Obviously, we don't have a morning line favorite. You have 2 for Saffie Joseph, 1 for Wesley Ward, 2 for George Weaver, and 2 for Mark Cassie. So the big guns are really firing in this race here. And as we bring up the picks right now, Charlie lockstep again. Granted, again, it's nothing too creative, guys. We're going with the Wesley Ward horse, who ran a hole in the wind in those 4.5 furlongs, as Wesley Ward did all meet long at Keeneland. But Noah, you are going somewhere else. You're going with the Cassie runner for Amisael Jaramillo, the number 5, and hopefully the aptly named Bullet.
Yeah, I'm going to try and beat the Wesley Ward, at least in the filly version. You'll see what I think about the male version later. But with Bullet, first off, they paid $425,000 for her, so obviously they think highly of her. But the one thing that I'm kind of keen in on is the works. Mark Cassie's not really a guy who's gonna, send all out and send bullets on the work tab. But I just like the fact that this horse is consistently, going 12 seconds to the furlong. He's got a little bit of a mix of the gates as well as a couple works on the turf. I just like the way that she's coming into this spot. And I'm just watching the replay of Perfect Chances, the 9 for Ward. I just wasn't so sure, it was a sloppy track. She kind of got away. She went 46 2.5 for a 4.5 furlong race. So I think if you're going to try and beat the Ward in this spot, I think the 5 is probably the one to go. Kyle, we can't hear you.
I've been muted the whole time. That is so disgusting. Host failed. Charlie's gone.
Where's Charlie? What is happening?
Either way, guys, I'm sorry. So either way, Bullet Warfront with a tad of a tap at mare. I just feel like this might be a little too short for a horse like this. Granted, coming out first, you see that Marquesse's trying to work some speed into her. 3 furlong works, 4 furlong works, just trying to get her ready for this spot. But I just thought, out of, Warfront's done fine turf sprinting, which is why I showed the stats. But I just feel like it might be a little too long for her. So I didn't have there. The man is back himself. That was an absolute
awesome
clusterfuck. there. Charlie, you have this horse in second. Noah talked about this horse in first, Bullet. I'm interested to see if you had any stats. I just think it might be a little too long, which is why I didn't have the horse in there.
Yeah, I mean we're on the hot spot now, boys. So we're in desperation mode. The Wi-Fi is not working. Yeah, but Wesley Ward took me out. No, I have Wesley Ward on top, so I think we're all locking up. I mean, look, what I'll say real quickly, because I'll be honest, I didn't get to hear anything. It wasn't working. But I do think this is the more vulnerable of the two Wesley Wards. I don't think this one is quite as talented personally from what I watched. Although I also will say I think this field's a lot weaker. I thought when we get to race 10, it's a lot more wide open. I thought the 9 and 5 in this race are kind of a tier above the rest from what I looked at. I mean, look, for Bullet, I kind of touched on what Noah, I'm sure, talked about. Again, didn't get to hear it, but I'll assume the name kind of suits the horse because a lot of these workouts are kind of bullets for a guy like Mark Cassidy who doesn't really try to ramp them up all that much. So for me, that kind of stuck out, as well as obviously the purchase price was pretty significant. But yeah, if you kind of look at other horses that have, obviously come out of Tappa, like Arthur's Ride, who's been decent, and Skillia, who just had a big race, and then you kind of look at other horses, and Marlin Spike has had some very high numbers and decent efforts. So but as you touched on, coming out of a war front, so I do think there's some interesting horses that Bullet's coming out of. And for me, again, I thought these are kind of my ABC wise, my 2As that stick out. And then going into the 3, who was my third choice, that was that the Ireland horse, I believe?
Yes.
For me, I'll be honest, this one was pretty straightforward for me. Again, I thought those two stuck out the most, but as soon as I saw No Nay Never, I was like, oh, is this one of any connection to No Nay Metz, who I had touted last year, and then that horse went on to win. And look, the works aren't amazing, but if I learned anything from last year, it's that you can't really doubt George Weaver, and that last time when I had the No Nay Metz horse that ended up running well, worked out pretty good. So I figured someone that's coming out of No Nay Never and has connection to No Nay Metz in theory should be able to do pretty decent.
Look, this is another one, Noah, that I mean, you don't have to obviously touch on this. I'm more just speaking to you because after listening to Charlie, No Nay Never out of a Galileo mare. This is another one that just seems bred to go as far as the turf will take them. So I didn't have this horse in here anywhere, especially with the shorter work, the longer works. Just doesn't seem like this horse is going to be ready for the 5 furlongs. But again, I could be wrong. The breeding's obviously there for this filly, but I think it's the breeding's pointed more towards routing than sprinting. The number 9, guys, for Wesley Ward, they kind of touched on it, that it might not be the best one, although she did run away and was obviously bet down very heavily, as this was after a couple of these where Wesley Ward we saw it last year, we saw it again this year. He continues to just romp these 4.5 furlong races. I like that this horse is drawn outside. I don't think this horse is necessarily has to clear, be anything. I think she's talented enough to be on the front end. And out of a Bayern mare, Shanghai Bobby, this horse looks prime for sprinting. I think Perfect Chances might have a perfect chance to be able to just sit off the speed that breaks from her inside, or is going to be able to clear just being so naturally fast. Then a lot of these first-time starters. I love the race under the belt. First, get that 4.5 run in here, which I'm sure Wesley Ward was using for a lot of these, as we'll see later in the card, priming these horses for these types of starts to maybe bring to ASCOT. So Perfect Chances is going to be my top pick. Charlie also has this horse on top as well. My Emmy, guys, was my second choice. Noah, you have this horse in third, so I'll let you touch on this after I touch on a little bit. Kalachi Queen, out of a War of Will, and War of Wills are just starting out. They're just into their first crop, the 2-year-old year. This is a horse that ran very well, ran well at Keeneland that one time that she sprinted 5.5. So I don't think the sprinting necessarily hurts her as some of the others with the breeding, but 48-3 was a good work back out of Palm Meadows. Gets Miguel Vasquez, who Mark Cassidy loves to use down at Gulfstream. So I think that's definitely one thing to look at for sure. And like I said, War of Wills, they've been very fast out of these works that I've been seeing from these War of Will horses. Gary Barber brings you here. I think this one could be really interesting, though. It just has to navigate the 11 post.
Yeah, I think the 11 post probably hurts her a little bit. Based off of works, I don't know if she's necessarily the fastest in this group.
Yep.
But it's Miguel Vasquez. These two hit at a pretty decent clip. And you kind of touched on it with the War of Will. He's starting to get hot at the right time. Last thing I'll say is you make a good point about the Wesley Ward because, if you want to look at it and kind of play devil's advocate, you can kind of think that Wesley Ward ran at Keeneland with already the intention to kind of come here and get the prep in before ASCOT. So it's not necessarily discouraging to see that, she kind of had her own way and ran at Keeneland because I think this is kind of the spot all along before ASCOT. So if you want to look at it kind of at both sides, you can kind of evaluate that way.
Yeah, and Walter Rodriguez, guys, is someone who rides for Ward a lot and has been riding for a long time. So if you don't know who Walter Rodriguez is, they win at a pretty decent clip. Is 2023 to 24, a nice crisp 31% for you guys out there for these two. So obviously nothing to shy about if you don't know Walter Rodriguez. He's a very good jockey in his own right. But yeah, no, that's exactly my point. That's Wesley Ward runs those 4.5s basically to get them ready for races down the line. And Wesley Wards are just so fast, talented. Those 4.5s, he generally blows by them at a pretty nuts clip, honestly. So I think Perfect Chances might have a good chance having a race under her belt. Mark Bogas brings up a good point. Keith Asmussen does show up, and that's going to come in later when I bring up other horses. But and then the 3 you touched on, Charlie, which is that other one for George Weaver. So
and there's one more I didn't include in there, but I just thought because I was trying to remember why I had this one written down. But the only other one I think is kind of interesting. I agree, Kyle, with your 6, but the 4, You Need Me. The only reason I didn't honestly have this horse in my top 3 was just the first starters with the trainer being 0 for 17 on those. But I looked at some of the progenies for the horses that this one comes from, and they include Yes, I Am Free and Fiona's Magic, which I just thought were interesting because those are horses that absolutely, obviously want to send. I think from Uncaptured, one of the better ones was Yes, I Am Free. And if you want to talk about a Gulfstream horse that certainly likes to send and, never look back, it's that. So obviously the 0 for 17 is a bit concerning, but if you're looking for one who, has some backgrounds where they expect them to really send like hell, that would be a race like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't seen that buyer yet for Fiona's Magic. Got a get a 0 in the day.
You cast the last place bet.
That is true.
I did.
Noah looked at me and Charlie and said, who's going to come last in the Derby? And we both said Fiona's Magic. So I guess that one worked out for us. And David Brady, if I go here and we'll go to first-time starters, just in general, he's 1 for 51. Guys, said 11. He's 11 for 51 in the money. So 20%, 20-something percent.
This could be one that sends it and doesn't have enough in the tank and finishes top 3, but
right, something like that. But definitely, obviously, the trainer stats have to be taken into account. The Ramsey's Pond guys, Divisadero has started out his clip very well. Only 4 turf sprints, but 2 for 4 in the money. Turf has been absolutely lights out, 21% with a bigger sample size. So I think the 6 Ramsey's Pond's definitely one to keep in mind. Obviously, with Saffie Joseph running down at Gulfstream and with some pretty decent workouts to boot. I'm going 9-11-6. Charlie's going 9-5-3, and Noah's going 5-9-11. Guys, switching over to race number 9 here as I bring up the picks right now. You see Noah, very astute, my friend. I like that a lot. We are both going 2-3-7 in the spot. Charlie is the odd man out here, going with the number 3, and as the Equibase loads for me here, it's a field of 7. An allowance optional 25,000, going 7 furlongs again on the dirt. And Charlie's going with the number 3, Cape Trafalgar, who I have in second, or who both Noah and I both have in second because we have the same picks in this race. But Charlie, you're going to start us off. Cape Trafalgar is definitely a really nice horse and interesting. Definitely one to run. Definitely when running down at Gulfstream. Obviously, Noah and I both think the horse is live as we have him in second. But what do you think is going to happen for Cape Trafalgar to trump the whole field?
Yeah, this is a field I actually know all too well. I've seen almost every single horse in this race in person now. So I kind of have enough of a feel out of them to kind of feel like this 3 will likely end up being the favorite. And at least to me, on paper, looks clearly the best. Some of these others have kind of run up against each other and haven't really run against all that strong of fields, in my personal opinion. But for the 3 horse, ran against Signature, who's a decent horse, obviously. Ran against Shaq Diesel, who Noah and I have some fond memories of cashing for us. And then Arthur's Ride, who, obviously ended up having that disappointing effort at, Churchill Downs, which we kind of knew right away when the horse wasn't able to get a good lead, but was bet down heavily in a race that was much more talented than this one. So for me, I just think this horse is versatile and can really sort of get any trip. And you can see from the figures perspective alone, in these last 2 races has really improved and kind of started to recover back to those numbers that, we had seen, last year in mid-August. I just think, obviously it's Safi, Zayas again, who are obviously kind of going to be the predominant trainer and jockey that you see at Gulfstream, with some of the other guys like the Ortiz brothers not down here at the moment. I think this is the classiest horse in the field, the most talented, and quite honestly, the most versatile. So for me, I think it was as straightforward as that. And I think this is a very reasonable spot.
No, I'm going to go to you next because I'm going to show up the time form here. And time form has it favoring front runners, even though there's 3 towards the front. Turbo is our top pick, who we have on the front end here with 103 early time form. See, the other 2, number 7, Toxic Gray and Big Martini, are not that far off from the early time form. But time form still has it as favoring early front runners, which I thought was really interesting. Obviously, Cape Trafalgar can win this race, as we both have him in second. And granted, hasn't won a while, but definitely could put it together with the stocking trip.
Yeah, I think what Cape Trafalgar's got going for him is the cutback. I thought he's run some really nice races going 1 turn. I mean, obviously it's 1 turn of Gulfstream, but going the sprint distance is what I mean. This is just another one where it's a little hard for me to trust him on top. He's obviously got numbers that fit in the race, but especially if the pace is kind of going up against him, especially with the slow numbers that he's faced in the past, and he hasn't been able to get it done. It just makes it a little tough for him. And then the last thing I'll say about Cape Trafalgar, if you are a little bit against him, and I think this is something that people don't pay enough attention to, this is a 1-time winner going up against 2, 3, 4-time winners. And I think that actually means more than people think. So if you want to take that in consideration and maybe, try and play against a favorite in a spot like this, I think maybe that might be the key.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely. I think this horse, even though he hasn't been able to win these past couple times going the same condition, but I mean, coming out of the Limehouse, only losing to 1 to Super Chow, who, I mean, in this race, I don't even know what 1 to 25,000 Super Chow would be in this race, but just very good stakes racing competition for Juan Alvarado in 2022. Source is 3rd off of a very long layoff and has run well both times. I just think this is the time, if any, for Turbo, especially when the pace scenario could really help him out. So yeah, that's Noah and I are both going 2-3. Charlie, of course, has the 3 on top. Charlie, I'll let you go through your other 2 who Noah and I don't have anywhere. I believe it's I gotta count them out. Braun and Brow. I'm sure not just for the name. Braun and Brow, the 6, and the number 5, Lunissima.
Yeah, so for starters with Braun and Brow, look, this is a horse, I'll be honest, saw this one in person and felt really strong after seeing Red hop aboard off of a solid effort, and it didn't go well. I'll just call it how I saw it. But in the race last time out, I watched the replay, and this horse got a ton of trouble, didn't really have anywhere to go, was desperately looking for somewhere to go, and then started absolutely rolling late, but it was just too late. So, I think with a cleaner trip and some more distance, it should help. It was kind of my big issue with Turbo, who's also a horse I've used in the past, and Toxic Gray were in this race, where I would highly encourage our viewers, if you choose to play this sequence, to watch that April 13th race, because neither of them really had any excuses and had every damn chance to get by Absolute Grit. And I will tell you, I know the horse isn't in this race, but Absolute Grit, I've never seen a more perfect name for a horse. If you watch this 2 horse and you look off the turn, you assume there's no way in hell this 2 wins this race, and you figure it has to be the 5 or 6. I mean, look, the 2's done here. The 3's boxed in, so you think, okay, 5 or 6 has this. And look, this 2 looks like it's fading, and inexplicably is able to come back and, again, lives up to the absolute definition of Absolute Grit. And the 5 and 6, with every right to win this race, can't do it. And you'll see the 3 kind of have some trouble at one point after they go in, can't really get them to go straight, and then eventually just starts rallying up late. That's why I brought him Brown underneath. But, yeah, my concern with 5 and 6 is you look here and you assume one of the 2 of them is going to win because they have every chance to. And somehow neither goes by, and then the 3 starts rolling late. So for me, that was just a huge red flag for those 2 who have taken money and haven't been able to really get it done in the past when I've seen them and have had every opportunity. I don't know. I know it says it's front favoring. I just didn't see it that way. I see plenty of horses that want to be forward at the Gulfstream Speedway, and I think there is enough pace. And then Lunissima, I'll be honest, I didn't really know what to make of this horse. I mean, the replay was incredible. Obviously, this horse was coming off of being a 30 to 1 shot in 3 straight races in way too difficult competition, takes the heavy class drop down, gets hammered, and then just absolutely destroys an awful field. So I didn't really know what to make, how much of that 84 is, truly accurate, or how much of it is just getting to run against significantly weaker horses. And when you win by 6, it's hard not to give an upgrade in Beyer.
Yep.
But I just thought as the other wild card in this race, and also with that 46-4 work, I just thought this one might be at least interesting to include underneath.
Yeah, this is a race where you can go so many different ways in this race, at least underneath. Noah, last horse, Toxic Gray, Eddie Pliza Jr. has obviously started off his year very well. Eddie Perez jumps aboard. Just another one, kind of like Braun and Brow, I thought could just sit off. And if there's actually does end up being more space signed down, I thought Toxic Gray could pick up the pieces.
Yeah, and I think Toxic Gray can take advantage of the outside post. This is definitely the most lightly raced horse out of the bunch. There's no doubt that in that last race that we just watched, he 100% hung, and it was a little unfortunate they didn't get the job done that day. But you have to consider the fact that was off a 13-month layoff. And the 2 works after that race, it looks like he's going to be fit and ready to go and bring his best stuff. And I think Edgar Perez is going to be able to sit a really nice trip with not a ton of speed in here. So if you're looking for one to kind of, improve off the layoff and one that we haven't seen their best, this could be the one.
I could not agree with you more. I have nothing to add. You absolutely talked about everything I wanted to say. But guys, let's move on to the last race in the sequence and the co-feature, which is the Royal Palm Juvenile Stakes. I'm going 2-3-7. Charlie's going 3-6-5, and Noah's also going 2-3-7. Guys, last race here. Again, Royal Palm Juvenile. You see our picks on the screen right now as I switch over the Equibase. Give me 2 seconds. There you go. 5 furlongs on the turf, of course. Of course, another win and you're in for Royal Ascot, another field of 12. And there's 2 Cassies, a Ward, a Safi. All of them are bringing their best stuff here. We all know who the morning line favorite is until tomorrow, of course. But just 2 of Noah and Charlie are both going with the same horse, and that is the Wesley Ward. No, Charlie, I'll let you talk about it first. Number 8, Raise the Bar, a Texas bred, again, ridden by Walter Rodriguez. So, Charlie, you said you didn't like the last Wesley Ward. This one's on top for you. What do you like more about this one's chances than the last?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, if you could pull up the replay, that was kind of the first thing that kind of stuck out with me personally, was just how effortlessly this happened and how confident Johnny V was the entire ride. I mean, I don't know if I've seen a much more relaxed ride before. I mean, even though the other horses that were behind were trying to catch up, you can see he never asked the horse. Like, there's horses that are literally within a length or 2, and he is never asking. He's looking behind. He's like, I'm already good. He's not asking. That was a huge plus for me. I mean, I'm not saying this horse beat any monsters, and obviously kind of like that last horse, it does seem kind of like a prep to this bout, which is certainly a positive, and I understand there's the concern, but for me, that was the big step out. Is the other horse, the time was a little slower, and the horse was being asked in the stretch and eventually eased up. The entire stretch, Johnny V, and for someone as veteran as him to just be like, oh, yeah, no, I'm already good. I'm home free. I have nothing to worry about. For me, that was a huge green flag and shows me the distance to me shouldn't be a concern. I think this horse has plenty in the tank, and I think this one, you could argue more so than the other one, isn't as desperate, for the lead or has to worry about things going a certain way. I mean, again, I know it's only been one race, but I was just really impressed with that effort. And I do like, that last workout was on the turf to kind of, get him a little more experience. But I also will say, even though this is the Ward I feel stronger about, I also do think this field is a lot more loaded than the other race. I mean, I'll tell you right now, from an ABC perspective, I had 4 A's and 2 B's and 3 C's. I think there's a lot of legitimate contenders in this race.
Noah, you also have this horse on here. Anything more you want to add to what Charlie said? If not, you can feel free to go into my top pick, who I thought is very interesting as well.
Well, we like to shove it down our viewers' throats, but I feel like it can't get mentioned enough that it's so important to watch these replays, because you see stuff like that. And, looking on paper, you're going to say, oh, this Wesley dominates his races and he only won by 2 1/4. Well, the horse
it was a paid workout.
And the way that he did it, especially from the rail and the slop, which is, not easy, I just thought was really impressive. And Charlie touched on it. I think this is one where I'm not going to mess around. And even though this field is probably much better than the Phillies version, I would be very surprised if this horse loses.
Yeah, and I have the number 12 Garden of War, and the problem is
Loved it.
the pace. I love this horse. The problem, again, is not the pace, it's the post, excuse me. This is another
Yep.
one, Sky Garden acclamation, but you see Sky Garden was a good sprinter over in ended up getting in the winner's circle the last race, but again, a sprinter over in Europe. I talk about how a lot of these horses aren't fit for the sprinting distance. Maybe they want to go longer. War Will, I already talked about earlier. The works are great. The only problem, Charlie, is the outside post.
Yeah, no, the two things I honestly had keyed in on when I was debating, what to go with, because man, oh man, does this horse get me excited. The two concerns I have is, number one, again, I think the 8 is the stronger ward and legitimately could be very dangerous. And number two, I just think that 12 position is so damn tough. I mean, I was honestly like, it hurt me to not be able to put this horse on top because there's so much I love in terms of how this horse is working with that 47 and 4 and the 46 flat on the turf got me so excited. And as you touched on, the horses that this one is coming from all point to this horse having a very successful career. I just think, unfortunately, was put in a very tough spot here. I will say, if there is a horse that upsets the Wesley Ward in this race, I would think it would be this one, and it wouldn't surprise me. But again, I would feel more confident about that upset happening if there was a better gate. I think the 12, it's already hard enough as a firster if you start in that 1 hole or 12 hole to not have those other horses around you. But again, also just having to navigate that wide is hard in most races. But on a debut, it's even harder. So, I mean, look, this horse could just prove to be as good as we're excited about, and maybe the post doesn't matter and the horse can get it done. But yeah, this is one I would absolutely encourage to use underneath and be one I would watch out for in the future regardless.
Yeah, just the breeding is definitely there, especially if the War Wills can still continue to bring out that workout form that they've shown in the mornings. Again, it's just the 12 post in a 5 furlong race at Gulfstream Park, Noah, is just so hard.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. I think for me, looking at this horse, it's hard to mention him without seeing that 46 flat, especially on the turf. So it looks like, we've touched on it. Cassie's not really a guy to, go all out in some of his works, and just the fact that he was able to do that on a turf course like Palm Meadows, a very tight turf course. Hopefully it's something that we see come post time. It's very interesting how this race plays out because as we've got in our picks, it looks like most of the major players are to the outside. So there's a lot of outside speed that would probably make it a little more tougher for him to get over if there's a lot of speed right to his inside.
I don't disagree with you by any means. Charlie, I'll throw it to you here to talk about, or actually, Noah, continue to talk about your, you have the number 10 Governor Sam for George Weaver. Horse that's only had 2 works, and obviously George Weaver has enough confidence to think that he's ready.
Yeah, it's a very optimistic spot. I'm not really too concerned about the 2 works just because I feel like, especially with 2-year-olds, he'll, jog him in the morning and stuff that's not necessarily registered in the daily racing form. But especially off those 2 works to throw in a spot like this, especially what they paid for him, they paid $275 at OBS in April. So, they bought him in April, got him right on the track and think highly enough to put him in here for Bregman Family Racing. Edwin Gonzalez hops on. It's a very interesting spot, and I'm very interested to see how he does in here.
Yeah, like you said, Alex Bregman Family Racing there, so obviously good vying for a spot to go to ASCOT. Charlie, you have the number 6 in here, which is I know. Yeah, for Patrick Biancone. Keith Asmussen, as we touched on, as Mark brought up in the chat earlier, he shows up at Gulfstream, and he hasn't ridden at Gulfstream at all in his career. So this was actually a very interesting move. Another horse that's working very, very fast.
Yeah, that's what caught my eyes. I mean, you want to talk about some serious works. Like, these are even crazy for like a Wesley Ward-esque kind of horse to have 46 flat, 47 flat, 47 and 2. I mean, for me, there's no way. I mean, again, I told you, I think the 8 is very talented, and I just think the 12 has, in terms of who the 12 comes from, was just too much for me to not get excited about. But when I saw these works, I was like, there's no way I cannot have this 6 in my top 3 anywhere. I mean, I don't care who or what this horse comes from, or if this is, maybe a trainer that doesn't get as many out. But I will say, first, even though it is a smaller sample size, nonetheless, 7 first-time starters winning at 29%, that's a big damn deal. And these works are incredible. And again, even though Keith Asmussen hasn't rode here, I feel like, and admittedly, I don't know a ton about the trainer, but I feel like he wouldn't really be coming to the spot and go to Gulfstream for the first time ever to ride a horse that's supposed to be a dud. So for me, I just thought those works made it really interesting. And the only other one I'll talk about real quick, because I said I did have 4 A's, and this is the other one, is Reach for the Rose, the 5 horse. Comes out of Audible. It's bred by Keith Ramsey and owned by Keith Ramsey. And, you always got to pay attention to those Ramsey horses. And, obviously with Saffie Joseph Jr. training, you got to pay attention as well. The works are, decent enough. And, he's won at an 18% clip with first-time starters. So this was one I wouldn't want to leave out as well. I mean, look, this is just like we've kind of talked about this whole time. This field, at least for me, is the one I'm much more excited about is race 10. This, for me, I know they're co-features, but this is the featured race for me. I mean, again, I thought as impressive as that Wesley Ward horse looked and could have looked much more impressive if asked, this is a tough damn race. I mean, there are so many good horses in this field. And I know we're saying this without seeing them, but at least from the works and breeding perspective, it looks like we have a lot of horses that could be serious here. So for me, this is a big race, and I think there are a lot of real chances. The one benefit I'd say this 5 and 6 have, as Noah touched on, is a lot of the other contenders are on the outside. So I think that's something interesting to look at.
I thought you threw it to Noah. I'm sorry. But either way, I think a lot of these firsters are ones you're going to have to take into account, especially Saffie Joseph. The horse is well meant. Also, Terry Frank shot out in the chat. He said he's riding for his future father-in-law. Obviously, Patrick Biancone is Andy's dad. So that's definitely that's obviously a good thing to keep in mind. But I have Bright Skittle in third, guys, and this is one that broke horribly first time at Keeneland and still was able to really rally home with Pratt in a 5.5 furlong sprint. I just think if the pace falls apart, which is, they could go very, very fast in these Gulfstream 5 furlong turf sprint. If he breaks a little better, is able to secure a little bit better position, I think Bright Skittle is at least interesting to have underneath if you're playing these races vertical. Horizontal would be a little bit different for me. It's talking on a just straight winning bet for Bright Skittle, but I think the hopefully securing better position and the late running speed is enough to put Bright Skittle in your underneath plays. I'm going 12-9-8. Noah's going 8-12-10, and Charlie's going 8-12-6. Guys, let's move into our best bets here. Then we will end the show. Again, everyone, thank you guys so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. If you could, if you're on YouTube, please go down below the video player. Please hit the like button, hit subscribe. It's the easiest and best way to help out the channel. We greatly appreciate it. But guys, let's move into best bets right now. Noah, I have you first on the thing, so you are up first, my friend. Race 8, a pick 3, going 5-9 with 2-3-7, and then singling the Wesley Ward in the Royal Palm Juvenile. And again, doubling down on that Wesley Ward horse, you're going exactas 8 over 10-12.
Yeah, my day is going to revolve around Wesley Ward's 2-year-old colt in the finale. So starting with the pick 3, it's going to start with the filly version. I'm going to try and beat Ward's filly with the 5 bullet, but I'm going to use both of them. And then in the second leg, I'm going to go with the top 3 that I had, the 2, 3, and 7, who Kyle and I both had as our top 3. And then obviously single towards colt in the last. And then in race 10, I'm going to have the Ward colt on top. Then I'll play Dutch exactas. The 12 is probably a little more of a logical, and then the 10 maybe at a price. And then you guys liked a few others that had some really nice works and potential, so maybe I'll throw those a couple in there as well.
Like I said, especially if you're so keyed in around that 8 horse, you can definitely spread around and still get some good value. Noah, good luck with your best bets. Charlie, going to you next. Ice cold double in race number 6, 8 over 3. In race 7, which is Marshmallow, and then race number 9, exacta 3 over 5-6, keying around Cape Trafalgar, I believe is the horse's name. So Charlie, talk about your best bets.
I mean, look, I think Big City. I think Big City is absolutely the horse to beat. We'll obviously have to see what happens, but I expect a big number there. And then going into Marshmallow Queen again, I just think they do a great job. The connections do of setting these horses up and putting them in the right races. And so yeah, I'm just gonna go with the Stone Cold double. I know it's not the most creative picks, but I'm trusting those 2. And then going into race 9. Going with the 3 horse again, I think that the cutback will be nice, as well as going against slightly easier competition. And again, I know it showed that it's favoring front runners, but to me, I think there's a lot of horses that are going to want to be forward. So maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but I'm going to be playing the 5 and 6 underneath. And I will admit the one thing that concerns me a little bit is, as you guys touched on, Toxic Gray second time out could end up biting me in the ass for not using that horse somewhere in the exactas underneath. But yeah, that's what I'm rolling with. I'm going to take my chance that these horses can roll late.
They said, I love, we're standing on opinions here. You have the ice cold double 8-3, definitely can get you some value there if it comes home. And then going around your second biggest opinion on the day with Cape Trafalgar. Charlie, good luck with your best bets, guys. I'm going with 2 different doubles here, and I'm singling around 2 horses. race, and again, one of them is Big City, which Charlie talked about. I just think he's head and shoulders above the field, and if he gets a good trip, he should win. He's probably the most likely winner on the entire card for me personally. I wanted to go 8-3, Charlie, but that 5 that Noah and I talked about, which is going to be sitting back just behind the speed and could just sit a nice stalking trip at a decent price. I didn't want to get beat by that horse, so I'm going 8 over 3-5 in the double there in race number 9. We talked about Turbo. If he gets to the front by himself, I think he's got a much better shot than just sitting off the pace. So I think Turbo could get a really nice trip in that one. And I wanted, again, that's another one. I wanted to single the 12, but I just was Garden of War, but I just was not a big fan of the post outside. So I had to throw the Wesley Ward in there. And hopefully if Turbo is not the morning line favorite or the favorite in the betting, you can get some good value there and allow you to go too deep in that race. But guys, thank you guys all so much for joining this show. Greatly appreciate it. And we have almost 140 people watching today for a race, for races just after the Derby, after racing cools down. Thank you guys all so much for joining again, as this has been episode 77 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. For Noah Maher and Charlie Freeman, this has been your host, Kyle Roscoe. Like I said, episode 77 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast, covering the late Pick5 at Gulfstream Park for May 11th and the Royal Ascot Win and You're In Royal Palm Stakes. And like I said, for my co-hosts, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a great night.